Hello, and here we are again, continuing on where we left off from the last time. We are going to be talking about forms today, and specifically, we're going to go into the form fields and automations. In the last episode, we talked about double opt-in, single opt-in, and the different checkbox things that there are in the form template. And so we're just carrying on. Now, when you get to the form fields area, name and email will be there by default. You can add other ones, and there's a drop down list of other form fields that you can use. And it's nice to know that those form fields specifically are connected, as well as name and email. All of those default form fields are specifically connected to areas in Kajabi where information is kept. So, what I mean by that is if you go into your client profile, contacts, and then pick your client, you'll see that there's like a name area and an email area. And that name and email areas are accessible in other areas and other parts of Kajabi. So, if you're sending an email, you can put a personalization in of name or email, first name, last name, even. Um, and Kajabi will pull from those fields. So you are able to create other fields to collect data from, custom ones. And there's a bunch of options, text area, radio buttons, all that type of stuff, checkbox. And you can collect really whatever you want. Any of your custom fields are not specifically associated to data areas within Kajabi. So what I mean is if you create a field that's called first name or a field that's called last name, and somebody gives you their first or last name in those fields, that information is not going into the client profile where the name is recorded. That information, as well as all other information from custom fields in forms, is going just to a kind of like a other info spot of your client profile. So if you go to send, Susie Q an email, and you collected her name through a custom field first name and a custom field last name, then Kajabi isn't going to know that this data this data profile is Susie Q. Susie Q is going to be stored in this other info area, and there just won't be a name for this person, this data field, or this data profile in Kajabi. And so if you go to an email and then use one of the personalizations to send an email to somebody and say, hey, first name, when Susie Q gets her email, it will just say, hey, and then there just won't be anything because Kajabi doesn't know that her name is Susie Q because of the way that you collected the information. So hopefully that makes sense. Other form fields are super great and awesome to use, but it's just important to know that the data collected from them is just other data that you've got. It's also great to know and understand, even though that name field that's default there always is just says name, it's actually collecting the first name and the last name. So if someone puts in Susie Q in that, Kajabi is going to separate those as first and last names and put them in the right spot so that they can be used as well, you get it. Anyways, you can change the name of that field. So if you wanted to say full name instead of name or something like that, you're certainly able to do that. And so that is the form field areas. And one way that they can be really useful is by, putting in checkboxes or radio buttons and then drawing on that information in the automations. And there isn't enough time, lo and behold, to talk about that here in this episode. So I'm going to make a new one. The next episode, we'll talk about automations. Who knew that the forms was going to be such a long saga of episodes? How awesome is that? Just awesome. So tune in next time, and I will talk about the automations of the form and how you can interact with some of the form fields in the automations to make some cool things happen in Kajabi.